Hey guys, so Jane here from Laser Gaming. In this video, I want to talk about a sort of concept Battlefield Vietnam game that just sort of had some ideas for. This is a game I'd really like to see. And if you are new here, don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe, and don't forget to leave your sort of game ideas for Battlefield down below as well, because I always like to share these and sort of do like a series where every couple of Sundays I sort of talk about Battlefield 2016 ideas and stuff. And not sure if this will go up on Saturday or Sunday, but don't forget to drop a like down below and subscribe if you are new here. So just get started with some background on the Vietnam War for those of you who don't know. So the Vietnam War started in 1965 and ended in 1973. The main purpose and why the US intervened was to stop and prevent communism. North Vietnam tried to invade South Vietnam and promote communism. South Vietnam didn't want communism, North Vietnam did, and the US wanted to help South Vietnam by preventing communism. By 1968, the US already had 500,000 troops in Vietnam, and the US was confident of victory. North Vietnam, however, launched an attack against 36 villages across South Vietnam on the Vietnamese New Year, and after that period, the US wasn't really too sure about victory. Most of the fighting was in the jungle, and most of the weapons and gameplay were Spec Ops missions. This is the main reason why North Vietnam ended up winning, was because it was mostly fought in the jungle. It was in their own territory, and they were masters of guerrilla warfare. And the US honestly just couldn't deal with this and didn't know what to do about it, because they just were fighting in an unfamiliar environment for them. There was a ton of bombing done by the US on North Vietnam. There was more bombing done on North Vietnam than in the entirety of World War II from both sides of World War II. So this is why I think it would be hard not to include sort of bombing runs in the game. And while it is annoying, it was such a critical part of the war. If they didn't include bombing runs or something like an AC-130, which I know is super annoying, but maybe not even an AC-130, maybe a bombing run similar to something we saw in Battlefield 1943, I think that'd be essential to include just for the realism of it. The US used gas to get rid of the forests, sort of just crumble all the trees and just to make it so that they couldn't use their guerrilla warfare anymore. And this could add an element of destruction, and I'll talk about how the gas could be used in certain game modes later in this video. The US also did invade Cambodia throughout this war, and there actually was a Battlefield Vietnam done in like 2004, and they do have battles done in Cambodia as well, and the US did invade Cambodia. Now the US pulled out of the Vietnam War in 1973, but the war continued for 2 years between North and South Vietnam until North Vietnam finally won. So I'm not sure if, for example, in the campaign or in multiplayer, there'd be certain battles that would just be between Vietnamese people and have the US not involved. But you also do some really interesting stuff with the campaign, where, for example, maybe you're a person who lives in North Vietnam, but you support the South Vietnamese, and you climb up the ranks in North Vietnam, and you end up just betraying everyone in order to support South Vietnam, even though you do end up losing. I don't know how they would do the campaign. It would be really interesting. Now I'm just going to get into some of the weapons and vehicles used. I'm obviously not going to name every single weapon, and something that's good about this is there's over like 70 weapons that were used, if not more, and I do have a full weapons list. If you guys want the full weapons list, don't forget to tell me down below in the comments, but I'm sort of just going to go through notable weapons from each side that you guys would know, just because I don't want to go through the whole weapons list, because that'd be super boring. So as far as pistol goes on the US side, there's the M1911 pistol and M1917 revolver. As far as infantry rifle goes, there's the M1903 Springfield, which is actually a sniper that's coming into Battlefield Hardline, the M1 Garand or the M1 Carbine, the MP40, the M14 rifle, which would be later replaced by the M16, the M16 and the M16A1. As far as shotguns go, there's the Winchester, the Remington 870. There's also a special operations weapon used by the Navy SEALs that was a modification to the Remington that made it full auto. We haven't really seen a full auto shotgun in Battlefield, so that'd be really interesting if they were to include that, if it is a Battlefield Vietnam game. M60 machine gun, Yeah, that's really the only notable one there. And there's also a flamethrower alongside the M79 grenade launcher. Now, when we get into some of the guns for the North Vietnamese, many of these are Russian and Soviet, as they were supported by the Soviets who supported communism. The AK-47 and AKM assault rifles, the SKS semi-automatic DMR, the Mauser Kar-98 sniper rifle, the Scorpion VZ-61 submachine gun, and the RPK LMG. So those are just a taste of some of the weapons that could be coming if we did get a Battlefield Vietnam game. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the game modes that I think they could include. The vehicles, frankly, are very standard. There's some warplanes used for bombing. There's both like jets and stuff like that. The US really had a jet advantage as far as that goes, and as far as the whole war goes, the US really had a technological advantage. There were LAV-like vehicles on both weapons, main battle tanks for both sides, same as the LAVs for both sides. Anti-air vehicles, although the Vietnam did have superior anti-air vehicles because the Russians did have superior missiles. Boats with machine guns, standard transport vehicles, and choppers. There were no attack choppers really, ones where the pilot was able to control missiles or machine guns. However, there were machine guns mounted on the sides of the choppers. As far as the statistics go for the war, the United States lost 58,000 soldiers. The South Vietnamese lost 250,000. The North Vietnamese lost 1.1 million. And between both sides, there were 2 million civilian deaths, which is just crazy. Just like say that I think Rush should be the flagship mode for this game, but towards the beginning of the war, maybe it should be like the US attacks. Maybe if there are battles or maps that take place towards the end of the war, maybe Vietnam or North Vietnam would be the attackers. Just a small detail, maybe switch it around. I also have an idea for a game mode called Dynamic Rush, where at the beginning of the round it starts off as the US defending against North Vietnamese attacks. As the North Vietnamese push through the forest and capture a couple MCOMs, maybe 4 MCOMs the first 2 sets, halfway through, then the North Vietnamese would have to become defenders, as the US would drop orange gas onto the forest. It would get decimated, and then they would have the advantage, as it would be more open gunfights. And then the North Vietnamese would have to defend as the US would try to push up and attack. Obviously, if either team stopped one another along the way, the game would end. I just think it would be a really cool way to incorporate aspects of the war, as well as just a cool new mode called Dynamic Rush. I also have an idea for a game mode that would be similar to Safeguard in Black Ops 3, but maybe one idea for a map. I'm not sure how this would work on maps that don't have water. I guess you could escort a truck or something, but my idea is there would be a game mode where you'd escort a boat down a river. You could capture points inside objectives along the side to provide fuel for the boat, or if you were the defending team, you would get bombing runs or support. Not sure how rockets would work against the boat. Maybe it'd be infantry only. Maybe if you shot a certain amount of rockets at the boat, it would disable it. But capturing side objectives would provide more fuel for the boat. The more objectives you held, the further forward the boat would be pushed throughout the map. And then eventually when we get to the end of the river or something, your team would win. Or if the other team prevented it, you would lose. I'd say faction-only weapons in some cases are almost necessary in this game. While some weapons were used on both sides, such as the MP40 and the Uzi, some were very specific to the sides, such as the M16 and the AK-47. A weapon license I suggest would be necessary for this game, similar to that in Hardline, but not 1,250 kills. I'd say 500 kills would be a lot better. Or an assignment, such as getting 100 kills with iron sights, 100 kills with one-time sight. Just different attachment combinations, maybe common historically run attachments, although there's obviously no red dot sights in this. I don't know why I put one-time sight down here in my notes, but there are no one-time sights in Vietnam, which is also something. It's only iron sights. I don't know if DICE would be able to go sort of historical fiction here and just sort of just throw in some one-time scopes and different sights just to make the game a bit easier to use. But yeah, that's some of the game ideas I had for this game. I think chain link should be included in the base game because it could fit very well in certain linear maps, and it's personally one of my favorite game modes in Battlefield 4, and I wish it was included in the base game and it was a more commonly run game in certain servers. This is a really cool idea. Fights could be interesting because the North Vietnamese had tunnels that would run underground that the US didn't know about. So they'd be able to pop out of a tunnel, shoot up, run down below, pop up in another area without the US even knowing. The way that this would give the North Vietnamese an advantage is maybe if you would be able to see it more, maybe there would be a marker on your screen that would show open tunnel here, whereas if you're on the US you'd have to find it. Maybe from the Vietnamese point of view there would be less camouflage on it, and the US would find it harder to see. I just think it would be weird if the US just had full access to these tunnels and knew about it, because realistically they didn't know about these tunnels really well, and it was a huge advantage for the Vietnamese, who could traverse underground and just the US wouldn't even know where they were coming from. They would just pop up, go down with their suppressors. It'd be super fun. Also, the map I have in the background that I completely forgot to talk about is the jungle map and Night Woods, I believe, from Hardline. That's just because I find that both these maps provide gameplay that would be similar to that of Vietnam, specifically the jungle map from Battlefield 4. The gameplay from that is very similar to what we could get in Vietnam. Now, yeah, the jungle map, if you like that sort of jungle map where I was running around with the AS Val and a suppressor, and it was working super well. You can dodge in and out of cover, in and out of the shrubs, and just shoot enemies without them knowing where you are, because it's really hard to see people through it, especially with the camouflage. I just think that's super cool. Now, here's sort of my arguments for this game and why I think it should be brought back. Many people don't want futuristic games coming back. I personally wouldn't mind it, but many people just do not want it, and I personally wouldn't want another modern Battlefield after Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and technically Battlefield Hardline's modern, but I mean, it's not really military. I would, just because World War II, if you look at Battlefield in 1943, there were not many weapons at all, like maybe like 10, 15 guns, and I just find that customization and just like the variety would be very hard to do. I mean, one of the main complaints about Hardline was that it didn't have enough guns and that the gameplay got old after a while. And then these people are suggesting World War II games where there just weren't that many guns available, and the games would get pretty old pretty quick, no matter how fun the base gameplay is. Now look at Titanfall. Base gameplay was ridiculously fun, but no matter how fun it is, everything gets old after a certain amount of time. The reason why Vietnam would be good is because it's 20 years after World War II. You would be able to use all these weapons, like 70. They probably wouldn't put that many in the game, but you'd be able to use a ton of weapons, get variety, and it would just be awesome. There's a ton of different stuff. I mean, stuff we take for granted, like awesome tank gameplay and LAVs would be there, but the awesome setting and the old nostalgic iron sights only gameplay would be there as well, especially in a new setting that we don't really get too much. We get a lot of World War II, we get a ton of modern military in like Afghanistan, and we get some in China even, just as fiction, some in Russia, but we don't really get too much in Vietnam. And I think it'd be really cool to see the gameplay that we could get. Well, all of it wouldn't be jungle. There would definitely be some urban areas within this that they could create through maps, and they could also go to certain areas around it, such as Cambodia. I find that it would be a super awesome game if it were to happen. Don't forget to drop a comment down below and tell me what kind of game you'd like me to talk about next. This video took a ton of time to make, so don't forget to drop a like down below between some of the research I had to do, getting the gameplay. It was just a really fun video to make, but it did take me a while. So don't forget to subscribe if you are new here. But that's about it. It was a big guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.